John, thanks for coming in. I really appreciate the willingness to.
My pleasure. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Tell me your real name.
John with the J. John Hogan.
Hogan. The
He's
third, actually.
The third, yeah, but I'm the only one left, so it's kind of like I don't need the third anymore.
When were you born?
August 23rd, 1947.
Where do you live now? What's your current address?
My address is up in Columbus, 144 Cameron Ridge Drive.
But you lived in Portsmouth for a while, didn't you?
Oh, about 42, 43 years.
Okay. All right. Where were you in Portsmouth then?
I was living Grandview Avenue.
Grandview
yeah,
Avenue.
Grandview. Yeah.
Now
We are here sitting, by the way, in the pub.
Yes.
And the pub is a place that we used to own, my wife and I.
I was going to mention that.
All right, I figured maybe, but I wasn't sure.
Well, we want to get that in, though.
All right.
Even more than once or twice.
Thank you.
But the library likes to have a little family tree and a little history.
Sure, okay.
What are your parents' names, your father and your mother?
My dad was John Jr.
Yes.
My mom was Phyllis Ruth.
What was her maiden name?
Devaney.
Devaney.
It's a Northern Irish name.
Oh, yes.
Now, Hogan is a Southern Irish name. So.
Was there any conflict there?
No, because she was in Donegal, which was still part of the Republic. So.
Okay. And now, let's see how far back you go. Your grandparents' names on your father's side.
My grandfather was John, John Sr. My grandmother was Margaret.
What was her maiden name?
Berdewick. She was German. Yeah, she lived in the Bronx, I think it was, and her father was a butcher.
Okay.
Yeah. And she had a twin sister, Millicent.
You have a sister?
No, she had a twin sister,
She
Millicent.
had a twin sister.
So I had like two grandmothers, pretty much.
You can never.
Which is not a bad thing, I guess.
And can you go back any further than that? Has anybody done a search?
I tried that online. I've never gone and got any professional to look for it, but I couldn't go back any farther. The story of my family is that my great grandfather's brother, Patrick, no, not Patrick, it's not Thomas. He came to America in the mid 1800s. And the story is that he came here to avoid some trouble in Ireland that he got into, and it was felt that he would be better off if he left the country. So, and he arranged for my grandfather to come and landed probably in New York, because I'm from that area of the country. In 1880, his brother was Patrick, my great-grandfather. And so it's around 1880, as far back as I can go in history. Beyond that, it's all Irish. And the records in Ireland were burned during the revolution in 1916 in the uprising. Okay. So when they burned during that Civil War, all those records got burned.
Oh my!
So it's really hard, unless you know precisely what parish they lived in, church parish. Then the records are it's very going to be difficult to find. So.
How about on your mother's side? Have you been able to?
Know very little about that side, because my father was one of those guys where he didn't want that family to be involved very much.
Oh, okay.
They lived in Boston. We lived in a place called Stamford, Connecticut, which is about 30 miles maybe or less from Manhattan. Clear day, you can see the Empire State Building. But and we seldom went to Boston. And the only time I can remember my mother's father was, I think he had tuberculosis, and we visited him in the sanatorium, I think they called him back then. And all I can remember is him lying in a bed. And then after that, I remember my mother's mother moving in, my other grandmother, with us. So I think he passed away. His name was John as well. I knew that. He used to be an upholsterer.
Okay.
He used to do the carriage upholstery with the little hammer and stuff. Yeah. What she did, I think she was just a housewife at that point. My grandmother. Her name was Annie.
Do you have any siblings, brothers and sisters?
I have a sister who lives in Philadelphia, or outside of Philadelphia, in the Amish country now.
What's her name?
Anne.
Anne?
Anne, yep. Anne Marie.
Anne Marie,
Yeah.
last name?
O'Hara. And it's not Irish.
That doesn't sound
No, but it's close enough. My grand, it's like everybody at home was fine with it because good Irish lad.
All right, all right. And any other siblings? You have a sister.
I have a brother who has passed away. He's
Oh, I
younger brother, actually. He passed away a number of years ago now. He was very young.
Oh, I see.
In his early 30s, I think, maybe. Yeah.
Now,
Peter was his name.
his name is-
Yeah.
and you graduated from high school. Where did you graduate from high school?
Stanford High School, Stanford,
that?
Connecticut.
Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
When did you graduate? When was that?
1965. Graduating class. I always tell this, to, especially to folks from rural communities. My graduating class, senior class, was over 600.
600
Yeah.
people.
And each class was about that size, and there were 4 classes in the building. It was a big, but there, that was average. That was just, yeah.
Okay. And after you graduated from high school, what did you do then?
Pretty much flunked out of college.
Okay.
I went
Did
to,
take
yeah,
much effort.
no, you're right. I went to a community college, Norwalk Community College. It's one of the next towns over from Stanford. And I amassed an amazing 1.9 average. This was during the draft.
During the draft?
Draft for Vietnam. So I had the exclusion
You had
or
a target on your back.
Yeah, so the group I hung out with was kind of like, the in crowd. And we did, instead of going to class, we did sports car rallies and all kind of theatrical performances. And,
All right.
yeah. And finally realized that, went into the office when I got my 1.9, I said, well, I'm thinking about joining the Navy. And the guys in the office who knew me said, John, it's probably a very good idea.
That's a good
But
idea.
you can't come back here. So,
While you were in high school,
Yeah.
did you work anywhere? Did you have little jobs?
I had a number of small jobs. I was a housekeeper, cleaning guy in a dress shop downtown in Stamford. I delivered. I was a delivery guy for a while for cleaning supplies, driving a little truck. And my most interesting job was working in the cemetery.
In the cemetery?
Cemetery, yep. And digging the graves and cutting the grass and fixing the stones. And yeah,
Okay.
that was a great job during the summer.
What did your father do? What was his occupation?
He was a firefighter.
He was a firefighter.
He was. My whole family, in fact. Every single one of them. I was the first one to go to college,
Oh.
to get out of that whole fire laborer kind of thing.
Okay.
And
Did
so
your mother work?
she was a nurse, yes.
She was a nurse.
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, my dad and my mom, I don't know if you got a plan for this, but my mom and dad met in the Navy. They were both Navy veterans during World War II. She was a Navy nurse. He was a corpsman, as I turned out to be. And they met, I think, in Seattle on the West Coast.
See? Are they still living, or are they
Nope,
passed?
both of them passed away now. Yeah,
Now, what did they think about you going into the Navy?
they thought it was fine.
the best thing.
Fine, yeah. Well,
Everyone
really,
agreed.
and it turned out to be the best thing.
Did
Yep, it did.
So you joined the Navy, and when was that? What do you remember that?
1968, February 68. Well, maybe 69. No, it was 68. Yeah,
So you would have gone to Great Lakes? Where did
Great
you-
Lakes during the winter.
What was that?
During the winter.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where you did your boot camp. How long was boot camp for the Navy?
I think it was 14 weeks.
Okay. Did you like it?
Not particularly.
No.
Food was good.
Food was good.
Yeah.
I think the
Take
Navy
all you
has
want,
a-
but eat all you take. Yeah. Yep.
Navy has a good reputation for food.
Yeah, food was excellent. Yeah.
Okay.
I still remember the strawberry shortcake.
Do you?
Mm.
You go back in a minute?
For the cake, yes, I probably would. Yeah.
Well, you were there about 14 weeks or something. What do you do at Navy boot camp? I know about Army boot camp. What do you do in the Navy?
Navy boot camp is pretty much learn to hurry up and wait.
I see.
You spend a lot of time in small spaces doing nothing. Seriously, I'm not kidding. Because back then it was so frustrating But looking back on it, I understand why. Because you end up, if you're in the Navy and at sea duty, you end up in small spaces doing nothing for large parts of the day except sleep.
That's the training.
Yep. So I think that you just got used to, and of course they had the scheduled classes you would go to learn Navy rules and regulations and how to tie knots and things like
Did
that.
you know how to swim by that time?
I'm a very poor swimmer. In fact, I had to take lessons. Remedial swimming. I think I failed that too, just like algebra. Yeah, it was.
Completely.
So, but it's not unusual for sailors not to swim. I didn't. Traditional. Well, most of the ones back in the day with the Iron Men and wooden ships and most of those guys didn't know how to swim.
Well, it's changed. Now, after 14 weeks there, what did you do?
Then I was assigned. You get assigned a. Well, I've got a story for you. I think it's week 12 or 10, somewhere along the line, you get to go in and see the counselor and decide what it is you're best suited for after you've taken all their tests and what you're going to be in the Navy. Now, and you sit on everywhere you go, you sit on a little bench and you wait. And when it's your turn, you walk up and you enter, and you march in there, and the other person sitting at the desk, and he says, you're recruit Hogan. Yes, sir. I see here you signed up to be a journalist. I said, yes, sir. He said, son, you know how many journalists we need in the Navy? He said about one every 50 years. Do you remember seeing that other sailor that just walked out of here? I said, yes, sir. He's my journalist. Let's see what else you can do.
What else did they pick?
So, well, my dad had been a corpsman, and at that time in the Navy, the corpsmen served with the Marine Corps as well. That was right around Tet, or Tet was coming up, so things were pretty hot overseas. In Vietnam. Things were pretty hot over there. The Marines were involved, and they needed corpsmen badly because they lost a lot of corpsmen. So as soon as I said corpsman, I said, well, my dad was a corpsman, my mom was a nurse. Corpsman, okay, here you go. And off I went to Corps School.
Where was that?
Also in Great Lakes.
Where was it?
Great Lakes.
Also good.
There's a hospital in Great Lakes, yeah. Okay. Navy hospital.
Would you say you, I don't know, liked that job, or what was it?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, I've always kind of, because of my dad was a corpsman and an X-ray tech when he got out, and my mom was a nurse and had always been a nurse, so I was kind of used to all that kind of medical and hanging out in hospitals and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. I meant to ask you also. You're married, right?
I am.
Are you married, single, divorced, widowed, separated, or all of the above?
Or other, yeah. Married.
Married.
Happily married.
Happily married.
For a long, long time.
That long. And you have children?
I do. One son, one daughter.
And their names?
My son's name is Christopher John. My daughter is Meredith Ruth.
Okay. Where are they now, and what do they do?
My son is in Columbus, and he's an attorney, a corporate law, I think he does. And my daughter is on her way with the family down to Florida.
Going to Florida?
Yeah.
Is she visiting, moving, or?
No, just for a visit.
Just for a visit?
Yeah. Okay. But she lives in Columbus as well.
And you have grandchildren?
Yes.
How many?
2 on each side.
Okay.
My son has a daughter. She's about 13, I think.
Okay.
And a son who is about 10.
Okay.
And my daughter has 2 boys.
2 boys.
And they're younger, yeah.
So now you're in the Navy, and you're going to like AIT, would be the Army or something like that, where you're going to advanced training.
Right.
To be a corpsman.
That's where I was in Great Lakes. Yeah.
How long did that take?
I think that was, it's so long ago, John. That might have been 14 weeks as well. It might have been 12 in boot camp and 14 for the for the A school, I think they call it.
You weren't married by that time, were you?
No, I was not.
Did you get married after you got back from Vietnam?
No, I did not. I got married right before we moved for the first year to Rhode Island.
Okay.
One of us had to be 21. Back in Connecticut at that time, one of the parties getting married had to be 21 years old.
Was that you?
Yes, I got married the day after my birthday. When I turned 21, we got married. So.
Where did you meet Barbara, your wife?
At Norwalk Community College.
At Norwalk?
When we were, and it was love at first sight. Walked in the door, there she was, and I said, "She's the one."
What'd she say?
And she had some reservations. Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you're through your corpsman training.
Right.
Training, and then what happens?
I was then sent to Rhode Island, Newport.
Then you got married in there?
I got married. Yeah, we got married after corps school. Got out, went home. I kept a couple of weeks leave, and got married. And then we packed up and moved to Rhode Island.
Okay. How long were you in Rhode Island? Were you stationed in Rhode Island?
I was for little over 11 months at the hospital. They have a naval hospital in Rhode Island.
Navy hospital.
Yeah, and in fact, that's where I became a psychiatric technician.
Did you?
I did.
Okay. Did the Marine Corps need psychiatric technicians?
Well, at that time, I was still Navy.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get the Marine Corps news until I was asked to leave the hospital.
Did you like Rhode Island? Did you like that?
Did. Oh yeah, it was still still New England. It's where I'm from.
Oh, yeah.
It's the next state over from Connecticut, where I was born and raised. So yeah, we were used to it. Yeah.
Did you know that you were going to end up in Vietnam?
I had no idea, but I knew it was certainly a possibility.
And so when you got your orders, that must have been a surprise.
When you're that age and inexperienced, you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and other than the separation, I don't remember. It was kind of like, okay, I've got an opportunity to go do what my grandfather did in the First World War, my father did in the Second World War, and now here's one I've got to serve in. My uncle went in the Korean War, and now it's my turn. So it was pretty much.
Was your grandfather a medic in the war?
No, he was not. He was a merchant marine, I think.
Merchant.
Yeah, bringing over on tankers, oil tankers. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now you're going to Vietnam. When did you? How did you get to Vietnam? How did you get there?
Good. I got a nice story for that too. From Rhode Island, I was asked to go to the Marine Corps, and we went out to Camp Pendleton. Camp Pendleton in California, Southern California.
How'd you get there? Plane, drive.
Yeah, we drove out.
Okay, who's we?
Oh no! Stop. That wasn't true. No, we didn't drive. Flew.
Did Barbara go with you?
No, she did not. Not during that time.
Did you have children by that time?
Nope. No.
So you're going to Camp Pendleton by flying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
Then I think it was they made you a qualified field medical technician.
More training.
Yes, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks, maybe.
Okay.
So it was, and basically they gave you a rifle and green uniform and combat boots and a helmet and said, now you're in the Marine Corps. We're going to teach you what we teach all the Marines in boot camp. So it's kind of like a Marine Corps boot camp for corpsmen.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
And
then how long was that? That was about 3 or 4 weeks? Or
yeah, I'm thinking it was only a couple of weeks. Wasn't too long. And then after that.
Did you have any leave after that?
Yeah. Got out. Had Barbara, my wife, was flying in to stay, to meet me before going overseas, because I had a few days. And the interesting story about that is we were driving to the airport. I think I flew out of San Francisco. So we were driving to the airport in the rented car, because she had a flight home and I had a flight overseas. It was the first time that we heard the John Denver song, Leaving on a Jet Plane.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was right at the time of its release, just late 68, early 69, somewhere in there. Yeah. And it was like,
That's our song.
That became our song, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you're flying west and she's coming back east. How long did it take you to fly? Did you have a stopover in Hawaii?
We stopped in Hawaii and Wake Island. Took 21 hours. And they packed us in on a Braniff. Braniff had the contract to fly the GIs overseas, and they packed us into, at that time, there were 707s. They weren't big, and they were like 6 across. So it's like, you're sitting like this the whole
You
time.
had been trained.
Absolutely. It didn't bother me at all. I just slept. Just like, that's what they teach you to do, is anytime you stop, sleep.
So there were other GIs in the all Army and all mixed.
I tell you the truth, I don't know. I imagine so. Yeah.
So you get to where'd you fly into? Cameron Bay? What?
No, I flew into Okinawa.
Okinawa.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what?
And then I was this was right after the Tet Offensive in the late '68, I think it was. I arrived over there in early February '69, and I was assigned initially to the 7th Marine Amphibious Brigade. So we had the Amtrak things and and we got notification that somewhere between California and when we got to Okinawa there was a change, and they'd done away with the Amphibious Brigade, and we were all assigned as replacement troops to the 1st Battalion 9th Marines, the Walking Dead, who were like wiped out, 85% casualties or something like that during Tet. So they were taken from Vietnam, put in Okinawa, like for an R&R kind of, like we got to get some more bodies in here because there's not enough to keep you over there. So I was a replacement for those guys. So we spent, theoretically, I spent the whole time in Okinawa, although from Okinawa we went on floats to Vietnam. That's why I have the ribbon, because it was considered in country. Fortunately, I was not assigned to walk around in country.
What did you do in country?
There was something called a float. They said, "Who wants to go on a float?" Of course, I was a psych technician, and I did that at the dispensary at Camp Hansen in Okinawa. Then which was pretty kind of a boring thing, especially at Payday. I might tell you that. My first payday in the military for 2 weeks was $23.
All right.
Second 2 weeks was $35.
Got a raise?
So that was it.
That was it.
And then I had a wife at home, so it's like, So I didn't have a whole lot of money to play with when I was gone. But they said we need some volunteers for the float. And a float is what you do. You're on like ready reserve. You get on the ships. You essentially become an amphibious brigade again. You get on the ships, and you float around offshore. And if you're needed, you go in. So they said we particularly need surgical technicians. But I wanted to go on. I was in the Navy. I wanted to go on a boat or a ship. So I said, "Who wants to go surgical?" I said, "Well, I got play experience." I learned on the job. OJT.
You didn't learn not to volunteer, did you?
I did not, but I'm glad I did, because I spent a good deal of time on an LST. It's the ones with the front that opens up and the trucks come off, and that was a very interesting experience. I have a great admiration for the World War II guys who lived on those ships for a long, long time.
How long were you on that boat?
I want to say 3 or 4 months out of the 12.
Did it have a name?
The Washtenaw County.
What?
The Washtenaw County, a county in Wisconsin. 11. I think it's LST 11. I think it was 1148. But
So now you're on the LST and you're there maybe for 3 or 4 months. And what kind of patients did you have?
I was like the senior, other than a chief petty officer. I was the senior physician, senior medical guy on the ship. So we had I don't know how many Marines, hundreds of them. So I was the doctor for them essentially.
Okay.
Luckily, Marines don't get hurt a lot that they worry about. You know what I mean? They've learned to not
Complain?
yeah, not complain about that kind of stuff.
All right.
So
Well then, what happened then? You're on that boat, and then you're off the. Where did you go?
we stopped in the Philippines, Subic Bay.
Oh,
Went into also went into Manila and spent some time in Manila. We also spent some time in Hong Kong. That was before it was given back to the Chinese. And there's been a lot of time. The LST was one of two that were like sister ships. The other one was sunk. I think it was the other one that got sunk. And they raised it up again to show the mighty power of the military, and they patched it up. And this thing could not keep up with the rest of the flotilla.
okay.
There were two or three other amphibious, the kind where the back opens up and fills up with water, and then they just float out. And then we had an aircraft carrier for helicopters, the New Orleans, which I spent some time on as well. And they would take off. I remember sitting. The LST is just for your information, if you don't know, it's about the big as a canoe. It's not. It's a flat, and it's got a flat bottom. So in the Navy, when you were traveling at sea on the aircraft carrier, which is a round bottom ship, you'd have mostly this kind of action. So I can remember in heavy seas where you're walking down the companionway and the ship just kind of turns and you're walking on the wall, and you learn to walk on the wall and then back on and then up this other wall and down. And when you're eating, you might slide all the way down and then you slide all the way back to your place. Yeah, it was interesting. The LST didn't do that. LST was a flat bottom. So what it would do all day is go boom, boom over the waves. Boom. Didn't have a lot of this stuff. We had amp tracks in the belly of the thing because they parked vehicles down below. We also had tons of ammunition, and we parked our vehicles. I was in charge of the motor pool for essentially the MASH unit. If it was Army, it would be MASH. They didn't have a name for it in the Marines. So I had a stretch Jeep that was mine, my official vehicle. And we had two 6x, the trucks, and two cracker box ambulances, the kind you see on MASH with the big cross on the side. So that was my world. That was my kingdom, and I had Marine drivers for all those vehicles.
Were you?
Yeah.
Well, were you went in country in Vietnam sometime, didn't you?
They called it the Golden Triangle. If you served in country at any time during a month, then you got combat pay for that month.
For that month.
So what the ships would do on the Navy ships, you got a lot of combat pay because they sail down South China Sea, go over to Vietnam, and sail back out again. And if you're any time in country, you're good. You get the pay. So they called it the Golden Triangle. It's golden. So yeah, I think the only time we were ever under fire was from friendly fire. I'm not
Friendly
sure.
fire.
Oh gosh, the B-52s. If for some reason they didn't drop their bombs on the targets, they couldn't land when they were going back to Guam or whatever they were flying to. They wouldn't land with their payload, so they drop it at sea. And I can recall, standing there with nothing to do, just looking at flying fish or whatever, and all of a sudden these gigantic explosions, and nobody knew what it was. We scuttled, but later on, the B-52s were empty of their payloads. Yeah, they were B-52s were bombing us. So
How long were you in the military?
3 years, 11 months, 2 days.
Okay. Were you?
Got out in 72.
Got out in 70. What did you do when you got out?
I went back to school, college, and had a
Walk out this time.
4.0 the whole time. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I was married, so I had somebody to just suggest that I work hard.
And boy, did she suggest.
4.0, it wasn't too bad.
What did you major in?
Psychology.
Where did you go to school?
University of Connecticut, UConn.
And you got a bachelor's from there?
I did. Psychology and sociology, I think the minor.
By that time, do you have children, or when did the
Nope.
kids come along?
Our kids came along after I got out of school. Yeah.
When you came back to the United States, did you fly into where?
Flew into San Francisco,
Uh-huh. That would be in
72. It would be
Okay.
February, I think it was February 72.
So you get off the plane.
Off the plane.
Are
Get-
you in
get my-
uniform?
Yes.
Do you have any problems with anybody?
We never left the airport because I had another flight taking me to New York.
Okay.
And in fact, that flight was what are they called? The ones that have the bump at the top, they have the second floor with the bar and all that stuff.
747?
Yeah, 747 maybe.
Something
Yeah,
like that?
that's when they had the red eye flights, and they were flying those things like every half hour between New York and California, like
Yeah.
a bus. And we flew back on that. There were 6 servicemen. That's it. Otherwise, empty plane.
Total, that's it?
And we were flying standby. So we had like 17 stewardesses the whole time on the flight. And I'll tell most of the time we just slept. We were just so really tired.
Wow.
But
So you land in New York,
I did
then what happened?
go to the Brooklyn Naval Yard and checked in there and asked the chief how long it was going to take. Actually, at the airport, my parents met me with my wife, my brother, and took us over to Brooklyn. And I went inside, said, wait here, I'll see how long this is going to take. And I went upstairs and said, Chief, how long is this going to take? He said, probably overnight. He was kind of grumpy. He didn't like to hear that. So I sent them home. And I was assigned to a medical detachment upstairs in the Brooklyn Naval Yard building. And I talked them into letting me go home and come back, and which is what I did. Leaving that building, we were told not to wear our uniform.
Oh. Did
So
you not wear your
I did not. I wore my pea coat. I had a navy pea coat, but everybody was wearing those things back then. And took a bus to Grand Central, hopped on the train, and went home.
But you went back at later.
Had to go back, and I don't remember how long. I don't remember how long it was, but I had to go back to finally check out and get my DD 214. Yeah. So.
What do you feel about going back home? I mean, there you are. You've been over in Vietnam,
Mhm.
in that area, and that sort of thing. Now
Yeah.
you're at the comfort of your house.
Yeah, very good. Actually, very good. Yep. In fact, I think they left the Christmas tree up.
Oh,
Yeah, because it was, I think, early February. Maybe we were going in, so my mom left the tree up. So it was very nice.
they
very
knew
nice.
you were coming.
They,
You didn't.
yeah, no, I wasn't surprised.
You didn't surprise
No,
them.
no,
Okay.
yeah. So
So then you get out of the Navy, and go to school.
right, University of Connecticut. Luckily, my wife was able to fill out all my paperwork, so I just had to show up and take
Work
tests.
hard.
Take tests. Well, actually, it turned out I was a pretty good student and learned pretty quick what I needed to do to make good grades. Put it that way.
How long did that take you? Was that a 4-year college?
Yeah. Yep, 4 years. And
What do you remember most about the military overall? I mean, just boot camp.
the camaraderie. Yeah, I think the people more than anything.
You still keep in contact with some?
We did for a long while, and we've drifted away since. I can't recall the next time. I've tried to look some of them up, and I failed. I couldn't find them. So.
Who would these people be? Fellow corpsmen?
Yep. Mostly from the ones I met in Rhode Island, in fact. Yeah.
What did you bring back any souvenirs from Vietnam? Or Philippines or Okinawa?
No, I didn't actually. Yep. Like most of the guys, we bought, stopped and bought stereo stuff, stereo equipment,
Stereo.
because it was cheap.
That was
So
a souvenir.
my Marantz, tuner and that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So that was shipped back.
Yeah. So what medals and awards did you get?
The regular service, the medal you get when you join, and the Vietnam ribbon with a campaign star and my little Marine Corps symbol on it. Yeah.
Now after college, what happened then? I mean, here you are with a bachelor's degree in psychology and a wife.
Right.
Now what?
Now we hop in the car
Yes.
and drive to California.
Why?
No, it wasn't that. I missed the California part. We left out a whole year of my service in the Navy. After Okinawa,
Yeah.
the final year was spent in Hawaii
You spent a year in
with the
Hawaii?
with the 3rd Marines. Yeah, I was transferred from the 1st over
A year
to
in
19.
Hawaii after
Yeah.
you got out of Okinawa. Did Barbara come over to Hawaii?
She did. We were able to. That's when we drove from Connecticut. I had a little MG sports car,
Oh.
and we packed it with all our belongings and drove from Connecticut to California.
Your entire estate was in there.
Absolutely, it was. She was packed in there, stuff packed all around her. Yeah, and they took
Good
the car.
timing for her.
They took the car and shipped it over to Hawaii.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And you're spending a year there. You and Barbara were a year in Hawaii?
Yes, with the
What was that?
3rd
doing like?
Marines.
What was that?
That was. I'll tell you. To be honest with you, first couple of months was wonderful. It was like paradise.
And then?
After that, on the pay of a enlisted guy, the island's like in 2 hours you can drive all the way around this place, and you're spending a year on it. When every day is 80 degrees, every day it rains in the afternoon, nothing changes, and you go to the beach, but that's how when you're a fair-skinned Irishman, hanging out on the beach doesn't work out too well for you. So, but
Well, you're there a year and you come home.
right, that's when I went back to University of Connecticut.
So now you have a bachelor's degree and a wife
And no job.
and no job, so the future looks bright.
Yeah, not on the East Coast. It didn't. Not then. So we said, all right, we sold what we owned. We sold everything we could get rid of, and we had the MG. Got in that, and just headed west. We're going to California. We had $437 in our pockets, and we were on our way.
Why California? Did you know some people there?
No, just figured, young man, go west. And I was driving the car my dad had given us at that time. That time across was an old Plymouth Valiant.
Oh.
So we were a little more comfortable than with the MG the first time. But we were hauling a U-Haul in the back, a little small one, and the car wasn't doing real well. It was getting tired through Pennsylvania, and we looked at the map in the Appalachian Mountains. And I said, we're having trouble getting over these. I said, we'll never get over the Rocky Mountains. I said, I know a guy in Nashville. Let's take a left.
Nashville.
So we took a left went down through here, Columbus, Cincinnati, came through there, I think, and ended up finally over in Nashville, where the physician that I'd worked for in Okinawa, Jerry Peel was his name. I think he was a lieutenant commander. He was in charge of psychiatry, division psychiatrist. And I had heard that he had ended up in Vanderbilt University as their psychiatry department. So I said, maybe I can get him to give me a job. And sure enough, I went down there, gave him a call, said, I'm in town. And he already had one of the other corpsmen working for him as well.
Really?
Yeah, a guy named Andy. I can't remember his last name. And said, I'm in town. Can you use me? And he said, yeah, sure, come on over. So I worked at Vanderbilt University Medical Center there for 2-3 years.
Really?
That's where I went to graduate school in Tennessee.
In Vanderbilt?
No, I actually went to the University of Tennessee.
Okay.
So,
And now Barbara, what is she doing?
She's a hard worker, and she has never had trouble finding a job wherever she's been. And she did first thing right off the bat. So
What she do?
she works in accounting.
Accounting.
I don't think she's an official accountant, bookkeeper kind of thing, but she's very good at organizing that kind of activity, keep track of it.
When did the kids come along?
They came when we went back to Connecticut.
You went back to Connecticut?
Yeah, because I graduated from Tennessee with my MSSW, Master of Social Work, and had a job offer there and a job offer back home. And I said, well, maybe I'll go home. I probably should have stayed in Tennessee, but did go home and worked for something called the WIC program in Stamford, Connecticut, at the health department there. Was running the WIC program for them. So that was my first official social work job.
Were you ever in the reserves then?
Mm-hmm.
How long were you in that?
I had a 6-year commitment. I served 4, so there was two reserve. Yeah.
Are you in any veterans groups? American?
No, I'm not. Actually, I'm not.
While you were in the Navy, did you meet any famous people? You know, the USO shows and anything like that?
Not in the Navy. I do not. Oh, yes, I did. James Mason. Do you remember James Mason, the actor?
Mason, the actor.
I met him in Hong Kong,
Okay.
coming down an escalator.
That was just fortuitous.
Yeah, just happened. He's probably the only famous one I can recall. Yeah, while I was over there. Yeah.
Well, now you left Tennessee and you're back home. And you had a real job now.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I was.
What was that job?
I was an administrator of the WIC program, Women, Infants, and Children's Food Program. It was one of the original 21 demonstration programs back then. Yeah.
How long were you at that job?
Did that for 2 years.
Barbara found the job.
And that's when my son was born during that period. Yeah.
Is he older then? Is he older?
He's 42, 40, somewhere around there.
And your
I'm not good with
daughter
that.
is,
She's 6 years younger than that. So yeah, she was born in 82, I think. Yeah.
So, well, you're there 2 years at that job. What happens then? What do you do?
I'm trying to remember. I worked at the health department, and why did we leave there? Job. In fact, that was kind of an incredible thing too. Decided I was going to move on and get another better job. Actually, on a social worker's pay, working in Connecticut at that time, I think Stamford was among one of the highest per capita incomes in the country, and mine did not meet that standard. In fact, we could not live in the same town that I worked in. Had to work in a couple of towns further east. So we said, this is what I'm making, and she wanted to stay home with my son, and I thought that was a good idea too. And so I got to make more money somewhere. So I put out my resumes, and I was selected to come to Portsmouth, Ohio, where for 26 years I ran the Alcohol, Drug Addiction, Mental Health Services Board.
So you sent in a resume to Portsmouth, Ohio for something?
Yeah, you go through the want ad kind of things, and you just send them out. And a guy named Brubaker was my predecessor.
Who was it?
Brubaker. What was his first name?
Brubaker.
Yeah, Brubaker. He was from Indiana originally.
Okay. I think I remember that name.
I wish I could remember his first name. Goodness. At any rate, he was leaving to move on to another job, and he invited me to come down. Story about that, I can tell you my second in command at that job. What was my title? Executive director. So my deputy director was a local from the area here in Portsmouth, and I'm from the East Coast out. Shawnee State at that time had a social work program. They may still have it, and they had a student from the East Coast, close to where I lived, and I'm from, who needed a mentor. So they talked to me about that, and I said, sure, I'll do that. He came in for his first interview in my office, and I had my deputy sit in with me so he can. And after we chatted for half an hour and talked about what he needed to do and that kind of stuff. And then after he left, my deputy turned to me and he said, what did you guys talk about? And I said, you were sitting there the whole time. He said, yeah, but I couldn't understand a word you said. Because we fall right back into the New England accent, the East Coast, the New York.
Yeah.
And it was, you talk very fast and you get everything, a lot of hand signals. He said, I couldn't understand a word you said. So it took me a while to learn Southern Ohioese.
How long were you with that board then? 27?
26 years, I think.
26 years?
Yeah, because I bought 4 to get my 30-year retirement.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's how you ended up in Portsmouth, Ohio?
It is. And we stayed here for that from, I'm trying to figure out when that would have, if I asked, my wife was here, I could tell you. Came here in the 70s and left, 4 or 5 years ago.
But you had a little entrepreneurial experience.
We did.
Did you? And right now we're sitting in one of your
Absolutely.
entrepreneurial experiences. Yep. Say it again. This is the name.
The Port City Cafe and Pub. And after I had retired, I'm a musician as well. I like to play Irish music and folk songs, and I'm a singer-songwriter guy. And two young men from Portsmouth decided they were going to build an Irish pub. And the first time I walked in here, I said, I'm at home. This is amazing, because this is, except for the scale of size, this is the pub in Ireland. And it came up for sale, and we were able to eventually get it as our own.
Who were those two guys? Who were those guys that did that?
John Sinclair and Damon Graff.
Yes.
They were the ones, and John's dad, Jim, did a lot of the work and the carpentry work and stuff. Yeah. And the place is simply beautiful. But and we ran that for a number of years, 3, 4, 5 years maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And loved every minute of that.
And
but it was hard because it's 20. We never made a penny on it.
Huh.
But we tried to break even. I think it was more of a hobby than a business.
Yeah.
Barbara loved it. She loved doing it. She liked the place more than I did. But I did I did all the theatrical kind of stuff and the promotional stuff, and she managed the day-to-day operation. And for a long time, we never saw each other.
You never saw.
Well, it's the restaurant and a bar.
Yes.
So it's open, 10 o'clock in the morning and closes at 2 o'clock a.m. So somebody's got to be here 24/7 doing that. So.
And you got to live here for pretty much.
Yes.
You gotta live
Yeah.
with this,
And we had one day a week that we were closed. And of course, that was the day I had to come in and clean and fix and mend. Yeah. So it pretty much was the lifestyle. Yeah. If we had an apartment here, we'd have been living here, I think. Yeah.
But why did you move to Columbus then? I mean,
Both children are there, all the grandchildren.
children? Okay.
Nothing here. Barbara and I both get a little too old to try to keep running this place.
Yeah.
So we said, let's follow the grandchildren. And our kids need us for them because they needed, at that time, the kids were young enough, they needed pretty much daily babysitting and attention. So we said, yeah, I like that. Pop can go up there and...
You're down here frequently, though, aren't you?
Yeah, we come down a lot.
Okay.
Just to visit Corey and some of the other folks. Yeah.
Do you still own property here?
We do. Yeah, we still own our house on Grandview.
You have a house on Grandview?
We do.
That's the house you had on Grandview?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
2330.
Well, where is Barbara? Is she in the back there?
She's probably in the back with Corey, yeah.
I'd like to get her out here and get her sitting.
That'd be fine. That'd be great. Want to pause here?
Huh?
Pause for some more refreshment.
Yeah.
All right.
John, who's this lady sitting beside you?
I have no idea. I just...
Came in office?
Yeah, the women do that, they can't. They see the hat.
Oh, yeah.
No, this is my wife, Barbara.
All right. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, John.
What do you have to say for yourself here? How did you hook up with this guy here so many years ago?
He's trying to see if you tell the same story I do.
Yes.
We met at place called Norwood Community College.
Yeah.
Right?
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
And through various clubs and organizations, and then he actually, at the end of that first year, was my freshman year. I then went to Southern Connecticut State College in New Haven. He went in the Navy, basically because they told him, you're better off going in the Navy than
You
trying
can
to
get drafted
back.
by the Marines or by the Army, or you can pick where you want to be. So I said, I want to be on a boat.
So
Didn't turn out that way.
he did that. We got married that was in February of '68. We got married in August of '68.
You remember when you first saw him? No, was not impressive.
Told you. See, I told the
Not
truth.
impressed.
I remember because you tried to run all that the tape recorder equipment for something. You were running something, I think.
Before that,
It was before. It was in that cafeteria. where everybody
Absolutely,
gathered.
yes.
Yes, right, exactly.
and the upper echelon.
Oh, that one room
Met in
everybody
the,
got to
met,
go
it
in
was,
that
it was,
room.
the community college was in a
school.
nighttime at a high school. So those who were in the elite category, like myself, we actually were able to use the teachers, faculty dining area.
You were involved with
So
that.
we had swinging doors with a round window in the door. And I walked through the door,
I
and
don't
you were
either.
sitting there with a bunch of people.
I have don't know.
You didn't know anything
Yeah,
about that.
that was it. I don't even remember.
Yeah, so.
Were any of your parents or in the military?
My dad was in World War II.
Was he?
He was in the Air Force. He was actually a weatherman. He said his time in the military, even though it was wartime, was fun because he always went in behind everybody. And he used to tell me, he said, the people that really did the work and everything won't talk about it. He said they just don't like to. He had a real good friend of his, and I know him. And Don Charles would never even talk about it because he was in the Battle of the Bulge. And he said, but Dad said, I had a good time. He was in Italy and Europe and Greece.
And he had fun.
He had fun, he said, because we came in behind everybody. That
After everything
did all the
was
work.
tamed down, calmed down a little bit,
He-
come in and you
Yeah.
get to party in the towns that were liberated by the guys who were
Yeah,
still
he said
getting
for-
shot at
he said
over
for
the other
us,
side of the hill.
He said, for me, he said, I was very lucky. He looked back on it.
What
but
does a weatherman do? Was he in the Army?
He was in the Air Force.
Air Corps, yeah.
In the Air Corps. I don't know. He said they,
Is he still living?
no, he's not. He said they were he was in college at Michigan Tech in Houghton. And they all got around. He said what happened was they all figured, well, we're either going to get drafted or we can maybe try to go in as officers. So he went in as, they went in and they signed up, I don't know exactly the whole thing, and they all ended up coming out as junior officers. And as a result, he became a weatherman. It might have been technical knowledge. I don't know, because he was studying to be a mechanical engineer, what it has to do with weather and all that.
What's that got to do with weather?
Weather.
Okay.
But he ended up as a weatherman, and they went in, and he talks about all the good, ended up in how he'll talk about coming back to New York City. He was born in Green Bay, and he never left Green Bay, so for him, going to Europe was a huge thing. But he does tell me his mother was mad that he did it, that he signed up. But
This is going to be on the Portsmouth Public Library webpage, this interview.
oh, okay.
So is there anything you'd like to say, you'd like the world to know? Do you want me to put you under oath first?
And that's right.
So
About-
is there anything you'd like to say?
About what?
Anything you'd like to say about anything? To John, for example?
I can say something about Portsmouth, Scioto County. Portsmouth, Scioto County was always very, very good to us. Very, very good to our kids. And I think it's to a certain degree, it still is now.
Lots of places, if you go to them, you're never really a part of the community. You're there and people, your friend, you have acquaintances and friends, but you're not part of that group. We didn't experience that here in Portsmouth. We feel like we're from here.
They pulled you right in and made
Yep.
you.
Yep.
And it's becoming even more, to me, more noticeable because we left to go to Columbus
Oh, yeah.
after we sold the pub. And because both of our kids were there. And it was very nice, but other than them, we really don't have. We have acquaintances we wait to in the morning and that kind of stuff. But there isn't a life, right? And that we've been talking.
You don't have one. No, I do.
Well,
You have no life.
but, and there isn't, and maybe it's that way everywhere, but where we live, a lot of people are from that Worthington area. We have a condo, it's actually in Columbus, but there are a lot of people from Worthington. And maybe it would be this way here, but their whole conversations, everything deal around with growing up in Worthington, and that's fine, that's not, but you don't feel like you're part of it. That's why it's always for me to come back here, it's a happy time.
My experience up there is different because of my singer-songwriter community. I get out a lot more into that environment. She goes to work, comes home, that's about it.
Yeah, I work for our son-in-law.
But Portsmouth is home.
Portsmouth is still
Yeah,
home.
I lived here longer than I lived in Connecticut,
Yeah,
so.
Portsmouth is home.
Yeah.
And whenever people say, where do you come from? That's what I say all the time. And you do too, basically. So it's a good place, no matter what people may say about it. It is a good place. It's a good place for families. And I really think, going through this COVID-19, I think that a town like Portsmouth is going to profit by it because people are leaving big areas to go to small areas.
Good point.
And we see here that all over. When he allows me to watch the TV, he doesn't let me do it anymore because I get very upset. And he said they're talking about they're leaving New York, they're even leaving Ohio, some of the major cities in Ohio, and they're looking for smaller areas to go to. And I said, it might be, Portsmouth might benefit from it.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you for letting me intrude in your lives for a moment, and John particularly for your service.
That's a
and
pleasure.
that sort of thing. And,
You too.
fist bump.
Yes.
Fist bump.
Fist bump, yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
All right.
you, John.
All right.
Thanks.
All right.